Welcome back, everybody, to our Genesis study. We're in chapter 18 today, picking up right where we left off. Just to expand this, share my screen with you. We're in Genesis 18 in the New International Version, if you would like to follow along with us. The three visitors. So just before we get into the text, and I know that there's controversies everywhere in the Bible, but just so that you know what we're dealing with, the brief overview essentially of the text that we're going to be dealing with right off the bat is controversy over whether this is about God and two angels, or three angels that represent God, or the triune God, or if this is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in some kind of theophany or some kind of pre-incarnate way. And I'll just tell you right off the bat, the way that I read this, I'm not going to say you have to read it this way, is I personally do read it as the Trinity visiting Abraham. I personally think that there is room for mystery in how that works out, but I think that is a crucial part of understanding what's happening here. So anyways, let's begin here. So the three visitors, basically, so verse 1, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. And Abraham looked up and he saw three men standing nearby. So just right off the bat, we have this play upon the singular Lord and the plural, the three men standing nearby. When we saw him, he hurried from the entrance of the tent to meet him, and he bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I found favor in your eyes, my Lord." And so he's speaking to three men, but he's speaking to these plural, three men, as singular, my Lord. "Do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat." So again, here, as I see it, you've essentially got two possibilities. You've got one possibility, which is this is some form of revelation of the Trinity here. You have Father, you have Son, and you have Holy Spirit here appearing as three men. Another is you just have, one would say, it's a theophany of the Father, but all theophanies are Christophanies. So you would say you have Christ here, who is the Lord, and then two other angels. Maybe they represent as a type or a shadow, kind of like of the Trinity, but they're not. I don't know. Anyways, just figure that out. But either way, he's speaking to these three men, and he's really only addressing, either he's addressing the three as one, or he's addressing one among the three as his Lord. Do not pass me by, right? Come and rest under this tree. And by the way, in this first part of chapter 18, it's not a one-to-one relationship, but it's kind of like an echo of almost of the fall narrative in Genesis chapter 3, where you have Adam and Eve, who after they fall into sin, they are walking in the garden, and the Lord is there walking kind of with them in the cool of the day. And he says, where are you? And of course, there's some trees there, and there's people who are ashamed there, and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, Eve, well, you'll see, right? So where are we? Let me get you something to eat. So, okay, so we have the tree, we have eating, we have the Lord. Instead of the cool of the day, it is the heat of the day. So it's definitely not going as well for anybody here. And the Lord is there. He's walking. And also, one thing we need to point out is, when we see in the Gospels, and this is especially pertinent as we are right now in Easter season, right at the end of it. But if you think back all the way through the Easter season, from Easter Sunday all the way through the end, if you do seventh Sunday of Easter, or if you just do Ascension Sunday, I don't know. But you've got so many accounts of Jesus eating things and doing things that shows, and we just saw this actually in the Verbum Day episode for Ascension Day, where we had a reading from Acts 1, in which Luke is referring to those things. He doesn't name, bodily eating food, but of course, this is how it's always been preached. This is how it's always been understood. He says here, He appeared to them, that's the apostles, over a period of 40 days and spoke about the kingdom of God. No, this is not the relevant section. What am I looking for here? Oh yeah, verse 3, Acts 1 verse 3. After his suffering, he presented himself to them, the apostles, and gave them many convincing proofs that he was alive. And that was one of those proofs, is that he was eating food, which a ghost does not do. And so it was a real body. And that's why this is important in this kind of controversy in Genesis 18, because people are often trying to say, maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, that this is a theophany. These are not, real incarnations, if you will. And I know there's also some kind of theological ivory tower stuff going on over whether or not you would call a theophany before the virgin birth an incarnation or a pre-incarnate theophany. And it's like, what, how? Okay, not even going to touch that one with the 10-foot pole. But anyways, moving on. Very well, they answered. And so again, you have the playing upon the singular and the plural, where, sorry, my text is moving around a little bit. He says, my Lord, singular, do not pass by, but come and let me give you something to eat so that you can be refreshed and go on your way. And are these yous plural or singular? I don't know. How do we figure this out? I don't know. Yeah, okay, so it is, yeah, plural, yeah. Very well, they answered, do as you say. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. Quick, he said, get 3 shades of fine flour and knead it and bake some bread. And so here we have the food that's being eaten by the tree in the garden, or at least the echo of the garden, right? And it's bread. Very sacramental. So then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. And of course, he's going to slaughter the calf. Very sacramental. And then he brought some curds and some milk, promised land stuff, and the calf that had been prepared, and set these before them. And while they ate, he stood near them under a tree. Again, tree stuff. So where's your wife Sarah? They asked him. There, in the tent. There. Sorry, this is not a question. I don't know why I said that. They're in the tent. She's over there in the tent, right? And then one of them said, I'll surely return to you about this hour next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him, and Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So he was 100 years old, or 99 or whatever, and she was 90 or 89 or whatever. But the thing is, she had been barren her whole life. So it's crazy enough to say, I don't know how easy it is for a really old man to impregnate a woman, but women, when they're that old, no, like you don't have babies after menopause. But she's not only past menopause, she's almost 100 years old. She's 90 years old or 89 or whatever. But more than that, she, even before menopause, she was barren her whole life. This is insane, right? This is, I mean, yeah, it's a miracle, right? It's a miracle. And on the other side of all these biblical texts, all these biblical stories, all the New Testament, everything that's so deep in our bones and in our veins, we look at miracles as things to be taken for granted. Of course, God can do that. He's God. But before all these miracles happened, it's not that obvious that God is going to do that. Maybe he can do it, but not that he will do it. And that's even the way that we so often think about our own lives still. I know that God can save sinners. I know that he wants to save sinners, but I don't know that he will save me, a sinner. And so it's always the subjective application that is the hardest thing to grasp for those people who are living religious lives in religious communities. Is, yeah, maybe, and this is even a generic thing, right? So whatever religious community exists, Islamic, Christian, Jewish, whatever, is they will often believe that God will do miracles. He will work wonders among that community that they're a part of, but not to them specifically. And in fact, specifically will exclude them. And that tends to be a common pathology with those in religious communities, of course, scrupulous individuals, but this is with all of us to an extent, right? So where are we? What verse are we at? Yes, now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. And Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was, way, way, way past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed herself, as she thought, after I'm worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? And of course, in this culture, not having a child is absolutely devastating. We saw even Abraham was absolutely devastated about all of this. And he said, even when the Lord said, I forget what he said. I forget what he said exactly. But when he was making the covenant with him and he was like, I am the Lord, your shield and your very great reward. And he was like, what can you give me? I don't even have kids. So whatever you give me will end up being given to strangers anyway. And you have to remember, of course, the way that children were understood in this ancient culture was like the way that you lived on in the land. And the land was your tie to living on in your children and in the tangible reality after you die and pass on. So for him and for her, this was a huge thing. And not having a child absolutely was devastating, absolutely was crushed. And that's why she calls this, of course, a pleasure to be had. Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. She will. That is a promise. You can keep that promise, he's saying. So Sarah was afraid, and this again echoes the garden account. She was afraid, so she lied. Yeah, echoing the garden account again. I did not laugh, but he said, yes, you did laugh. And often you'll hear pastors and you'll hear preachers and teachers say, oh, well, he was saying this in a very kind of way. He was saying, haha, no, you did laugh, but it's okay, haha. I don't really think that we can get anything like that from this text. If anything, yeah, the Lord is a God who does rebuke unbelief. And that's what we see right here. So, but not only that is this is not the height of her unbelief. This is not the height of Abraham's unbelief. This is not the height of their disobedience. And the great thing that you're going to see later as we move through these chapters is it's in the midst of their unbelief, it's in the midst of their disobedience that God still keeps his promise to them. And that's because when they cut that covenant, that was a unilateral covenant. That was God saying, no matter what you do, I promise that this will happen for you, not because of you, in spite of you, all because of and by my grace. So, verse 16, moving on. When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. And then the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations will be blessed through him. And it's really this part where the emphasis should be laid, because as he then lets Abraham in on what's about to happen, Abraham then gets to, I guess, flex his muscles here and put them really to the test to see, or not to see, but to actually start advocating for and blessing these nations and these people. And so let's go on. Let's see this. Let's see how this happens then. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord. And what is the way of the Lord? It's not only holiness and righteousness, keeping from sin, but doing good to others, advocating for others, including sinners, for their salvation, for the mercy of God, by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he's promised him. And so it is, he's chosen Abraham to be the one through which he will bless all nations. Yeah? Okay. So then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous. Let's pause here. What is the sin of Sodom? And it came up in reading that we had, the sin of Sodom. So I'm just on my phone now trying to Google it. Because I don't want to paraphrase and have you not believe me. But yeah, just to paraphrase it, and then I'll show you the actual verse. Is it Ezekiel? Yeah, I think it is. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and underconcerned, and they did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty, and they did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them, as you have seen. So here's the thing, right, is that often when we speak about Sodom, when we speak about Gomorrah, there's really two common pitfalls here. The first is that we ignore Ezekiel 16:49 through 50, and we say, yeah, it's just about homosexuality. The other pitfall that the open and affirming churches fall into is they only look. Well, not really. It's not that they only look at Ezekiel 16:49 to 50 and say, well, they didn't care about the poor, they're arrogant, overfed, unconcerned, they didn't help the poor and the needy, they were haughty. And then they skip over this. Oh, hold on. I'm getting a phone call here at the office. Sorry about that. This is what happens when you record in your office. So as I was saying, what was I saying? That's a good question. Oh yeah, so Abraham here is going to advocate for the nations, and this is really the first way in which he gets to do that, in which he gets to bless all people, even before the birth of Isaac. So where are we exactly? Oh, and then we were speaking of Sodom. Yes, that's right, Sodom. Yeah, is that the abominable practices, and there's another text I was going to go to in Leviticus, but I'll just tell you about it. You can Google it; it's easy to find. Is when the Lord is speaking about the sins which cry out to Him from the ground, he lists them, and of course, one of those things is a lot of those things are sexual sins. And if you are confused about why sexual sins are crying out from the land, I guess you should leave a comment, and then we'll have to do a sexual ethics episode on Transcendent Truth Media. But yes, so, well, let's get into the actual account then, right? So when the men got up to leave, so on and so forth, and Abraham, and shall I hide from it, and so on. And where are we now? Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I must go down and see if it is what they've done, if what they've done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me is. If not, I will know. And this is basically an echo of the same thing that happened at the Tower of Babel, where he said, and I'll just go there actually, this is Genesis 12. No, Genesis 11, sorry. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. And the Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language, they've begun to do this, then nothing, blah, blah, blah. But come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand one another. And so many people ask and say, people who we would call process theologians or open theists or whatever, that these texts say that God didn't know these things would happen, that he needs to come down and see these things because he's not omniscient. But that's not really what these texts are getting at. And really, as we see even in this text, is God he's not just content to just know all things and do all things by sheer omnipotence. If he was, we would have no incarnation. If he was, we would have no theophanies, no Christophanies. If he was, we would have no prophets. If he was, we would have a simple deist God who sits there in heaven as a divine watchmaker and lets things run their course. But our God, the true God, the only God, the living God, is interested in getting to know us, to live with us, and even see our sin for himself. And so he really is. And this might sound crazy, but it's not. And so he ends up sending those two men, whether those are two angels that represent the other persons of the Trinity, or maybe they don't, or they're just angels. I think that probably wouldn't be the case. Or is it the Son and the Holy Spirit? Because often it is that way, that the Father remains and he sends the Son into the world, and he sends the Holy Spirit into the world. And so it is always the Son and the Spirit interacting with us. And actually, that's what the word logos means in Greek, is that the logos was philosophically in the Greek world, the way that the gods interacted with creation. So anyways, whether that's whatever it is, he is going to see through these two men, be them angels or be they God. And so the men turned away and went towards Sodom, But Abraham remained standing before the Lord. This is where he blesses these people, or at least tries to. He doesn't do a super good job of it. Then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? And of course, as Lutherans, we laugh and say, there are none righteous but God. But anyways, that's beside the point. Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of the earth do what's right? The Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. And then Abraham spoke up again, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes. What if the number of the righteous is 5 less? And so on. This dialogue keeps going on, right? But the essence of the dialogue is Abraham is accusing the Lord of acting unrighteously. And not only that, he's using God's other characteristics that he knows about him from God's other revelations to Abraham to say, look, I know you. I know you're a righteous God, and you're going to tell me you'll act this way, which is in contradiction to your own character in the way that you act in every other way and every other circumstance. Well, that cannot be. And so Abraham here is putting the Lord on trial. And oftentimes as Lutherans, especially certain Lutheran schools of thought, we talk all the time about how the greatest abuse of the law is putting God on trial. This is what Abraham himself does. So I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's wrong. What I will say is he has 0 grounds to do it, and I think he knows that. But at the end, he says, for the sake of 10, and then he stops there. But the thing is, the Lord doesn't find 10. And so the question is, it's an open question because there's, of course, no answer to it, is if he kept asking, if there's 5, if there's 3, if there's 2, if there's 1, will you save the whole city for the 1? We don't know. But anyways, yeah. So when the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. And then the Lord, he's no longer in the story here. And then the 2 men. Are these 2 men not the Lord? Are they just 2 angels? We don't know. However, the fact that they're called 2 angels in verse 1 should not make that an open and shut case, as in the previous chapter, they were literally called men. So the 2 angels arrive at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. Lot is, of course, I believe he's Abraham's nephew, not cousin, but is if you recall earlier in I think chapter something, is they split up because there was too many goats or whatever. They had too much stuff to fill that land, so one of them had to depart. And Abraham said, look, you choose where you want to go, and I'll choose whatever's left over. And so Lot ended up going into Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's where he wanted to live. So that's what he did. And so Lot sees them at the gateway of the city, and he sees them, and he got up to meet them and bowed down his face to the ground. My lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way earlier in the morning. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square, which would be obviously a very dangerous thing to do. But the idea here is they're trying to find out just how sinful, just how dangerous it is in this place. No, they answered, we will, but he insisted so strongly that they did end up going with him, and they entered his house, and he prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all these men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. Like literally the entire city, literally every dude in the city, young and old, child and geriatric. And they called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may what? And this is the question with what am I thinking here? Yeah, with the opening and affirming churches, is that they act like the sin of Sodom here is merely obviously the rape that they're intending to do, but it is very, very clearly spelled out here, especially when Lot offers up his daughters in exchange, and they say, no, we specifically wanted the men. That would not be involved. That would not be a part of the story. if that were not a part of the sin of the outrage here. So yeah, bring them out so that we may have sex with them. Of course, this is not consensual sex. They want to rape these men. And so Lot went outside to meet them, and he shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters here, and this is the thing. This is wicked too." He's saying, no, don't rape these men. Rape my young daughters, which is a horrible thing to say. "Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them." This is just disgusting. But don't have anything to do with these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. And of course, any thinking, living, breathing human being with a conscience would say, yes, Lot, and also so are your daughters, your young virgin daughters, also under your roof, who you are then giving away for the sake of these strangers. Of course, someone would say, well, this is a different culture. That does not justify it. Anyways, get out of our way. And here's why I'm saying this. Get out of our way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. So they were going to rape Lot too. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. And then the men inside reached out and pulled them back and so on. So let's stop here for a second. So of course he says, no, take the daughters instead. They say, no, they want the men specifically, but it's not just that. It's that they're enraged that he would say, don't do this wicked thing. And they're saying, how dare you say that gang rape is a wicked thing? Who are you to be the judge of me? And this is like an extreme circumstance, of course. Is when we're talking about right and wrong, sin and evil, Sodom does not come anywhere close to what we are speaking about. And really, in a way, and I know it's some would say this isn't a Christian thing to say, but we really do need to give thanks that these people were all destroyed, really frankly, and that they don't live next to you. So the angels pull Lot back inside. They strike all these men blind, young and old, so that they can't find the door. And then the 2 men said to Lot, again, are they angels? Are they men? Are they the Trinity? We don't know. So do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-laws, sons and daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? And in fact, you did, right? He said, get them out of here because we're going to destroy this place, this whole place. So obviously now Lot knows, oh, these are not just 2 men, because they have the power to destroy an entire city and to strike everyone blind, of course. The outcry to the Lord against his people, that is the sins that they are doing, is so great that he sent us to destroy it. Now, we think also, I forget the text reference, so I can't get it for you. But when you see the angel of death come over Egypt and take all the firstborn, that is also said to be the angel of the Lord, who is, of course, Christ. And if you look at Luther's morning and evening prayer, when we say, in the original ones at least, it doesn't say, let your holy angels be with us, but it says, let your holy angel be with us, or with me if you're doing it privately. And that is understood as Jesus Christ. So, because angel, of course, means messenger, like the one sent. So, where am I going with this? What verse are we in? Yeah, so he sent us to destroy this city. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who were pledged to marry his daughters. And he said, hurry and get us out of this place before the Lord's about to destroy the city. But they didn't care. They didn't believe him. They thought he was joking. And so with the coming of the dawn, so on and so forth, and we'll just skip a whole bunch of this. They end up trying to escape the city. And basically well, you know how it goes, right? The angels end up sending sulfur and all this stuff. Lot pleads that he can go not all the way out of the city, not all the way to fleeing to the mountains, but he wants to stop in a little town, and then he's going to flee to the mountains. And that's eventually what happens anyway. So he does end up going into the mountains anyways, and so on and so forth. It's, again, with, as you know by now, with a lot of these texts in Genesis, they're longer form than New Testament texts, especially epistles. Longer form than a lot of the prophecies. And so it's easy to get kind of lost in them. But yeah, here we are. So essentially, this is all that's unfolded here now is the Lord had been hearing about these sins. He went to see if the sins were as bad as they were. Lo and behold, they certainly were. And so he was going to then destroy the city, and he was going to take Lot with him. Lot had been deemed righteous, and that's why later in the Bible he's called righteous Lot, although we know, well, even by human standards, that's not righteous. But of course, just as Abraham was counted righteous by his faith, so too must it then have been Lot who was counted righteous by his faith, because by his actions, he's only ever going to be condemned. And so he goes and flees. His wife does not flee properly. She ends up dying. And so let's see if we can find that verse actually right. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. And thus he overthrew the cities in the entire plain, destroying all those living in these cities and also all the vegetation of the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And so she was judged as well. And this is all here as the angels were saying. As soon as they brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives and don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." So they were warned, but she did not obey that. And we would think that these are small things, but over and over and over again in the Old Testament, we see something that seems to us like a completely minuscule, minute, ridiculous thing to get upset over, or not upset over, but like to punish someone over. And time again, Uzzah was killed for touching the ark. Nadab and Abihu were killed for burning unauthorized incense, strange fire. Lot's wife is killed and turned into a pillar of salt for looking back when she was told not to. So over and over and over again, we hear that obedience to the exact word of the law in the exact way that it is laid out, or else you'll die, is given. And of course, this goes back all the way to that very broad concept of the demands that the law of God makes upon us as sinners. It is not to be 99% righteous, but it is to be 100% righteous, or else you will die. And that is such an impossible standard to keep that simply nobody will ever or has ever kept it except Christ, who then freely gives it to us by faith in him. So where are we then? Early the next morning, Abraham returned from the place where he stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising up from the land like smoke in the furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham and brought Lot out of the catastrophe, and he overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. So we'll end it there, and we'll pick it back up at verse 30, because then we get into something. Actually, yeah, that's what we'll do. So God bless you. Thank you for staying with me for this. And yeah, we'll just continue moving on as we are doing this study live in the parish. I think we're in the middle of chapter 24, so I've been a little bit behind on getting the video episodes up, but we're just going to keep moving on until we get there. So when we come back, we'll finish up 19, move in through 20, and keep going. And the same with the Ezekiel episodes as well. So God bless you and take care until we meet again.